Look around and see the beauty of the sky. Here for you and me, a wonderful life. I need to together. Sunshine fills my head. Keep saying it. Running high, the heat is in your head. It seems to hate you, cause you are dead. Look around and see the heavy from the sky. For you and me, wonderful life.
Everybody, my name is Megan Conway. You get to actually watch me do some of my artwork. Well, I'm working on something, but actually loosen up my hands for a little bit. So you can actually get this model piece on the site I have on the description down below. So yeah, I'm listening to disco of the 80s and 90s. It's supposed to be uncopyrighted, so non-copyrighted. So I'll be doing this for a little bit. So I think I'm gonna do Friday night. It's gonna be game night, and then Saturdays I'll try to do art night. Saturday, Sunday. So yeah. Okay. All right.
Me out, will you send some more than more than I give you love? Some more than more than I give you, and more than I give you love. give you my more and more and more and I give you my more and more and more and I give you together. You wanna be my lover, wanna be my lover, be my lover. Time for your love. Oh, before I make your mind into you, make sure you wanna be my lover, wanna be my lover, You can see it in the woman's eyes. You can hear her in your baby's cries. You can hear her in your lover's sighs. You can feel the pain of hands. Yeah, hold it right there in the palm of your hand. Feel it around you every day. And you have got to say, I'll give it. I'll give it all to you. Give me everything I want. I'll give it all to you. And I feel it in the rays I want, and I hear it in the windy storm, and I feel it and I see it down, and I smell it in the wind of dance, And I see it in my heart, I face. And I hear it and I feel my knees. And I feel the Lord show for me. Give me everything I want. I'll give it all to you. And God, give me everything I want. I'll give it all to you. Give me everything I want. I'll give it all to you. God, give me everything I want. I'll give it all to you. God, give me everything I want. I can't stop, can't stop. I'm still looking out. God, give me everything I want. I'll give it all to you.
She's gonna get you all that you want. With another baby, it's gonna be all that you want. With another baby, all that you want. With another baby, it's gonna be all that you want. With another baby. She's gonna get you all that you want. With another baby, it's gonna be all that you want. With another baby, yeah. All that you want. With another baby, it's gonna be all that you want. With another baby, yeah. Just gonna get you all that you want. Another baby, it's gonna be all that you want. Another baby, yeah. All that you want. Another baby, it's gonna be all that you want.
Can you imagine how it's supposed to love phrases into the sky? Reaching on the leaves to get into the space I can someone wants to love me, someone loves me, someone please. Sooner or later, they'll be gone. So harder than always, without you, all of that. Feels like done and the sun, and I'm left forever. So many places living up today, so many songs we forgot to play, so many dreams swinging out of the blue. Oh,
Stop again. when you're not fair, I give you the love, I just don't care. What is right and what is wrong? Give me a sign. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No. What is love?
Baby, don't help me. Don't help me. What can I do? What can I say? It's up to you. I know we're wrong, just me and you. I can't go on. Baby, don't help me. What is love? Baby, don't help me. Don't help me. No. We are together. I need you forever. Baby, don't break me. Want you to. I don't know why you're not fair. I give you my just don't care what is wrong and what is wrong. Give me some one love. Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. Just me and you. I can't go on. Maybe don't hurt me. Hurt me more. Love me. Don't hurt me no more. And we are together. I need you forever. Take the love. Another reason, the vision of love that seems to be true. Another dream, but always in the night I dream of such.
Okay. Probably not going to see the way, but I'll be right back. I have to look the puppy outside so it's easy. So I'll leave you with some music.
I dream of you so true. In my dreams, I'm in love with you. As you come to me, like the in my dreams, I'm in love with you. That you talk to me like the first. I feel joy, I think I still the same. When the night is falling down, dreams, I'm in love with you. As you talk to me, Look around and see the beauty of the sky. Here for you and me, a wonderful life. Look around and see the beauty of the sky. Here for you and me, a wonderful life. No need to ask. It's our it's our wonderful miracle. Out to see again. The sunshine is in my head. Dreams singing in the air. It's my blue eyes. No, it is it must be it's our it's our wonderful. It's on in your eyes, the heat is in your head. They seem to hate you because you are dead. I need a friend, oh, I need a friend. Makes me happy. Standing on my own. Look around and see the beauty of the sky. Here for you and me, a wonderful life. Look around and see the sky. Here for you and me, a wonderful life. It's our wonderful. It's our it's our wonderful.
So, right now, I'm gonna start winding down pretty soon. So, I think I'm gonna listen to.
I feel sick just thinking about that night. When I was in my very early 20s or so, I lived in some pretty shitty apartments. Pretty cheap, too, because of this. They were known for being a little bit sketchy for the area, even. There was this one neighbor that seemed to be listening to James Brown and Motown, so even though he seemed a bit off, I thought to myself, how weird could he be? He's chilling to some really classic old music. Surely he can't be that bad a guy. I'd hear him blasting his music and having loud conversations through the walls. But then again, we both had studio apartments that were touching. I would just play my own music to not hear his stuff so loudly. One night he was drinking quite a lot. He seemed to have his girlfriend around or something. You could hear them being belligerent, but nothing that seemed out of the ordinary. At least for him, I suppose. It wasn't too late yet, so I headed out for the night with some friends, while my boyfriend at the time stayed in. I got dropped off around 1 a.m. or so. As we were driving into the lot, from afar I could see my neighbor outside, looking like he was hiding in between some cars in the apartment or something. Okay, that was pretty weird. Whatever though. This guy was just kinda creepy anyways. At that point, my friends were more weirded out than I was actually. I didn't think that much of it. This guy was always doing some weird shit. I had one of them drop me off near the entrance because it was easier for them to leave that way. That was until they started to drive away. I walked up to go into my apartment, which I had to pass by his first. I swear my heart dropped out of my chest. I noticed he was still standing by them, but now his body was hidden behind the bush that was in between our apartments. As I approached, it seemed like he thought maybe I hadn't seen him yet because it was so dark out. He was standing as still as a statue, like he was trying not to be seen. I waved and mumbled hi to let him know he wasn't fooling anyone. I was not going to pretend at this point I couldn't see him. I didn't want him to try anything, since no one was out on a weekday at this hour. At that point, after acknowledging he was there, he stepped out from behind the bush and came into the dim porch light. Never in my life have I locked onto someone's eyes like that. My heart's racing even as I type this. His eyes were widened, dark, and fully dilated like he was just a wild animal. He looked like an absolute lunatic, if I were to express his energy well. He didn't say anything, but he gave me the most bone-chilling look. I ran into my apartment as fast as possible. My boyfriend was drowsy since it was late, but he did say the neighbor's music was loud and continued for some time. He heard a lot of noise and arguing earlier, but he hadn't really thought that much of it. That night, all night, we heard thumps coming from his apartment, and it also sounded like furniture was being moved. It weirded me out, knowing he was still awake and in that crazed state I'd viewed him in, almost primal. The next morning, I heard cops banging on his door and was partially relieved to see them. I was also super scared to see why they were there in the first place. They took him away in handcuffs shortly after, demanding to be let in. They asked me when the last time I had talked to him or seen him was. I told them about that night. The arguing, the noises, the frightening encounter, the thumping all night. What I found out during the next day will make my stomach turn forever. I was told this from the groundskeeper. Details I'll keep more simple since the act was so horrendous. The Motown James Brown listening neighbor brutally murdered his girlfriend that night, dismembered parts of her, and dragged the rest of her body near the train tracks, which so happened to be directly behind our apartment. It hit me that the cold, primal, and wide-eyed look I'd seen in that man was the look of a person who'd just taken another human being's life. and was worried I'd noticed he'd done it. In such a vicious and disgusting way, too. I felt so sad for that woman, who definitely did not deserve to go like that. She was always quiet and so sweet, and seemed a bit down on her luck. She was always asking for cigarettes whenever I encountered her. To this day, my stomach turns, thinking about how close I was to death, quite literally. He could have ambushed me out of insanity, since he was just waiting in the darkness when I walked up. Basically, to all of you who follow their intuition and gut feeling, listen to it. If you have a bad feeling about someone, even if they seem completely harmless, just stay a safe distance and be wary of them. I moved into a different apartment right after. It was just too much thinking about what happened that night. That neighbor went to jail, of course. I saw his booking photo, where he looked even more scary. I just hope he stays in jail for a long time, where he truly belongs.
I don't know what to say, really. We're in the dark right now. And we can stay here, or we can fight our way back to the light. You gotta look at the person next to you. Look into their eyes. I think you're gonna see someone who will go that inch with you. Because when it comes down to it, you're gonna do the same for them. That's a team, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what are you gonna do?
After listening to some human trafficking stories elsewhere, I can't help but feel incredibly uneasy. My heart is racing at the thought of what we might have avoided. Stay vigilant, both men and women. For reference, my boyfriend is about 6'3" and 275/300 pounds. He's very stocky and has a military style. He used to be in the military. Usually he just wears a shirt with some guns on it in some way, and has a very thick beard. This is somewhat important for the story, actually. About 3 years ago, my boyfriend and I moved into a house with a couple of roommates, near downtown in a big city of Michigan. I had sent him to the store for some staples while I started unpacking. He texted me just after arriving, saying he had the weirdest thing happen in the parking lot, but he would tell me when he got home. 10 minutes later, he texted again, saying he was super creeped out, and jokingly told me, "If I'm not on my way in 5 minutes, please send help." This was normal for his kind of humor. When he got home, he told me that on his way in from the parking lot, a man had stopped him, offering several compliments on his beard. It happened quite a bit from guys, so he didn't really think that much of it at first. The man seemed to be dressed as if he were a lawyer or a real estate agent or something. Nice shoes, nice watch, very clean cut. He didn't seem suspicious at all. My boyfriend said thanks and began to walk inside. The guy continued walking with him, asking all those questions, where he was from, what he did for a living, if he had kids or a wife. His gut lit up like fireworks, and after working in mental health for a bit, he knew to trust it. He made up some answers and told him to have a nice day. The man told him, "If you're ever interested in a new line of work, you're just the kind of guy we're looking for." My boyfriend continued walking without responding, and didn't look back. Only a few minutes later, he noticed the same man was now in the store and was appearing in all the same aisles as him. Whenever my boyfriend would notice him, he would immediately turn around and go the other way. At one point, the point he texted me, he was sure the man was secretly snapping photos of him from the other end of an aisle. We both commented on this craziness and said, "That's some trafficking shit right there." We let it go, though, as it was now over and no one really wanted to believe it. Days later, we ran to the store again to pick up some late-night snacks. We parked the car what felt like miles from the store and began walking in. Thankfully, I don't really startle easily when we're out together, because we both conceal carry, and if someone tried to attack us, we're decently prepared. Still, though, I jumped when a man's voice suddenly yelled out my boyfriend's name and added, "And his pretty wife, too." My boyfriend told me to keep walking and not hesitate. Thankfully, I knew what he meant. I hauled my ass into the entryway of the store. I watched the man walk up to my boyfriend and start talking with him. while watching for any suspicious people or cars around them. When they were almost inside, I walked in, too, next to him, and started chatting with the greeter, so the man didn't get a chance to talk to me. The man showed up in all the aisles we were in, and at one point pretended to be texting on his phone, but was clearly taking photos of us. We didn't get to finish getting snacks. Instead, we left right away. I waited with the greeter, as my boyfriend grabbed the car so I didn't have to walk through the dark lot. After that, I was in the gym every day at the same time due to my work schedule, and usually had my girl roommate with me. Today, though, I was alone for a quick and light lifting session. I wasn't even a minute in, though, when that exact same guy walked in. I had never seen him there before. Instantly, I felt like vomiting. I texted my boyfriend to let him know, but he was now away on military, so he was now panicking from a distance, unable to do anything. The man wasn't in gym attire, and he didn't have any equipment with him either. We were also at the gym furthest from that area from before, so I have no idea why he would have chosen to go to this particular one, unless he was a really big fan of this gym for whatever reason. The man came over and tried to talk to me. I politely said hello back, but tried to ignore him. He said a few more things, and a guy a few machines over, I think, could tell I was in a bit of trouble. He came over and pretended to be my friend, asking if I was ready to go. I said yes and tried to grab up my things. The creepy man then asked me where my husband was off to. I pretended not to hear him, as I kept on walking. When I came out after finishing my session, the man seemed to be gone. My new fake best friend was waiting on the bench outside the locker room. He said the man had waited around for a while but finally left. He had let the staff know what happened. They said the man wasn't even a member. He had told them he came there to pick up his girlfriend. My new friend walked me to my car, and I switched gyms after. Thankfully, we now live far, far away from the city, and I've never encountered that guy again. Neither has my boyfriend. Honestly, I believe they might have been trying to recruit him to make big money selling women or something, and that I was just a bonus woman to sell. Thank God for kind strangers who stood up to that guy and saved me. Those kinds of people will never realize how important they are in the world. I used to fight with my parents a lot as a teenager. That led to them kicking me out once I had graduated high school. I was almost 19 at that point. For me, that wasn't much of a problem. I had my own job, my own cheap car, and my friend's parents had a spare bedroom. They were willing to let me rent out for a while. Worked out just fine for me. This being said, I will change all the names. Let's call my friend Kelly and her mom Lena. Her dad is Kenneth. Kenneth and Lena had a lot of weird friends, due to the fact they were quite fierce partiers. A lot of these friends were genuinely nice people, just a little bit weird. You could tell they had issues such as drugs or criminal pasts. But none of them were bad or mean or creepy or anything like that. There was one particular guy, though, that was just beyond weird. Just someone who, even though I didn't know him at all, he made my skin crawl the moment I looked at him. We'll call him Joey. I came home from work one day, and the only person there at our house was Joey. As soon as I walked in, he said hello, then made some comment about how beautiful I was. I don't consider myself good-looking in the slightest, so I just kinda said thanks and walked off to start doing my normal routine. As I was making my lunch and cleaning up my mess, I could feel someone staring at me from behind. It was Joey. He'd followed me into the kitchen and was now blocking the only doorway, just standing there watching me. I asked him if I could get him anything, but he shook his head and continued to watch me. This made me very uncomfortable, of course. I kinda shoved him out of the way and fled for my room. I locked the door until I heard everyone else get home. Joey finally left around dinner time. I thought it was fine and went about my nightly routine and went to bed as usual. He must have come back at some point, though, because he was sitting at the breakfast table when I went down to get my cereal. Again, the whole time he just stared daggers at me, so I took my food to my room instead. Friday night rolled around. Lena, Kenneth, and Kelly told me they were going to throw this huge party, and I should invite whoever I wanted. I just had a gut feeling, though, that Joey was going to be there. I invited the most intimidating male person I could think of, my neighbor Charles. He was a pretty huge guy, around 6'5" or so. He was also covered nearly head to toe in tattoos and happened to be an ex-Hell's Angel. He was the type that, unless provoked, wouldn't hurt anybody. I explained by inviting him the day before about how Joey was behaving. What he told me scared the shit out of me. Turns out he actually knew Joey. Apparently, he was on the run from the police for raping some teenage girls the year before, and said I needed to stay as far away from him as possible no matter what. You'd think that would be where the scary part ended, but no, it gets worse. I'm usually not a cop caller myself since I can hang with an unsavory crowd sometimes, but I went straight home, packed all my things, left to a safe place, and called the police. Here's the worst part. When they finally arrested him, they took a look through his phone. I don't know how the hell he managed this, but he had multiple pictures of me on it. Most of them were of me sleeping, or me in the shower or using the bathroom. He had texts to another person about me, and about what they were planning to do with me when he got the opportunity. I no longer talk to Kelly or her parents, and when someone gives me a bad vibe, I instantly get away from them. I'll forever be grateful to Charles.
Dang it.
So I am super creeped out right now. I, 27 and female, was home alone last night, sleeping soundly in my bed in the middle of the night, like would be usual. I was suddenly woken up, though, by the sound of someone seemingly trying to push up on my locked bedroom window. I couldn't see the window from where I was. It was just past my footboard on the other side of the bedroom, and I was laying down. I could recognize that unmistakable sound, though. The window was locked. Someone was jiggling it around, trying to force it open. I know that sound because I've locked myself out on accident plenty of times before, and have tried to get in through that very same window. I sat up in alarm, only to get a good look. I saw a dark silhouette of a person looking in through the window. I laid back down for a moment, confused, tired, and groggy. I didn't believe I was actually seeing what I was seeing. When it finally clicked that I was, I shot right back up. Now, though, as I looked back to the window, they were gone. I tried my best to get back to sleep, but of course I was too spooked to do so for the rest of the night. In the morning, I thought I might have just dreamed it. I called everyone I knew that it possibly could have been, and nobody knew anything about it. Nobody was at my house either. Nobody I knew would just try to get into my bedroom window in the middle of the night anyway, especially when I don't think this person even knocked on the front door before trying to jimmy open my window. I went outside to investigate, just to make sure I wasn't being completely crazy. I looked at the window. Lo and behold, handprints of whoever was trying to slide up the glass, all over it. It had rained that night, too, so I could make out their muddy shoe prints going to and from my window, and all throughout my backyard as well. I have no idea who they were or what they wanted, but I'm really glad I remembered to lock my window that night.
When pain says, I'm here, I say, so are they. Just want to leave. 12 hours of uninterrupted pain relief. Believe. Who do you take it for?
Myself.
I'm a 27-year-old female. I graduated from high school about 10 years ago. In my freshman year, I was well known and had quite a bit of friends. I was very friendly with everyone, and every time I saw someone alone, I would greet them and offer them my friendship as well. Sometime during the year in my math class, though, we had a new guy. We'll call him Jose. Jose had recently moved to the U.S. from Mexico. He hardly knew any English. Me being Hispanic, though, I was able to speak to him in Spanish at least and make him feel somewhat welcomed. Jose had no friends at all, and always sat by himself. In that math class, I started helping out Jose quite a lot, actually. He would sit behind me and always play with my hair. Not my actual head, but just touching my hair so I could hardly feel it. I sort of felt like he had developed a crush on me. He was not bad looking either, so I didn't take it as a big deal. For a few months, he just continued to play with my hair like this. It became kind of a norm, actually. He said he really, really loved it. Towards the end of those months, he said he wanted to play a game, and asked me to write the things I loved the most in life. He said he would do the same, and we would both share papers once we were finished. Of course, I wrote down family, God, friends, a whole bunch of other normal things for a teenage girl. When I gave him back the list, he wanted specific names of everyone on it, and said he would do the same. I did end up writing the names of my friends and family. One day we were just hanging out in class, when Jose leaned over and whispered to me, "Can I show you hair? Over full even." Jose pulled up his sleeve and showed me his arm. He had 10 healed-over knife scars just about that went down the length of his arm. There was a fresh wound as well. He grabbed my hairs from the bag, rubbed it on top of the freshly opened wound from the night before, and said, "You're mine now. I know what you love. I know who you love. If you don't do as I say, you'll pay for everything. These are all the scars and the souls that I owe. Anything and everything that happens from now on. Think of me." My heart sank. He smirked. I ran out of class crying and ran to the office. Everyone was so confused. I asked to speak with my counselor immediately. I explained what happened, and Jose was pulled out of class. He was taken to the principal's office and expelled that very same day. Well, because of that, I now feared for my life. They found all of these notes he was collecting on other people in his backpack. Mine were in there. They had the most. They saw the scars and found my bag of hair. I never heard of Jose again. I've had some pretty fucked up shit happen in my life after that, and every time it did, I always thought of Jose. I haven't talked about this in years. I'm kind of afraid that if I even mention it, he'll hear it and will follow me once more. I got close with God now, closer than ever, and I pray every day that I'll never meet him again. Until this very day, I don't know if Jose was just messing with me or what, but I will tell you that after that encounter, I was no longer the super friendly and open-hearted person I used to be.
I'm not surprised.
I grew up in a small town, and when I say small, I mean small, small. As in, we didn't even have a store in that small town. What we did have, though, was a jail. Charleston Correctional, perched right on top of this great big hill. It basically held people who were really low risk. There were still some sketchy people there, though, who had been there for so long they'd earned good behavior treatment. My parents were getting divorced at the time. Both of them were smack dab in the middle of a midlife crisis, which left me to care for my 3 younger sisters all alone pretty much. My best friend lived just up the street from us. Remember, it was a small town, so up the street could still be a good 20 to 30-minute walk. There was a decent snowstorm one night. I got all my siblings tucked in for the evening before I decided to walk up and get my friend. She didn't like walking to my house alone, so I would always walk over and then walk back with her. As I walked to her house, I remember thinking just how quiet and eerie it was that night. When I arrived, her mom started yelling at me. Apparently, I didn't know this, a man had escaped from jail earlier that day. We decided it would be better for all of us to camp out at her house instead of walking back in the dark and snow. We were about to go get my sisters in her parents' car when her brother came crashing through the door in a panic. That guy was out on our street. Granted, he was like a mile and a half away, but I had been walking right towards him and not even known it. We grabbed my sisters and stayed at her house that night, listening to the snowmobiles on the trails out back looking for him. It turned out he had called a cab, murdered the driver with a hammer, ditched the cab in a field by Tate's farm, and eventually gotten caught. That field was only a mile away from my house. We talked about that for a long time afterwards, because none of us had ever worried about having a jail so nearby before that. It's a true story. Happened about 17 years ago in Charleston, Maine, if you want to check. That was the scariest and most unusual thing that ever happened in our small town.
Listen to yours. I mean, while I personally don't understand why you take 15,000 pictures of just you, just be respectful. Don't take a selfie at any of the following places listed on the screen. It's not right.
Okay? Listen to your TV, yeah. Drivers who switch to save a brick.
It can be everywhere.
About a decade back, I used to work at a brewery or a pub. It was set in a pretty big and old building from the early 1900s. I worked there for a couple of years, and most of the time it was pretty chill, but backbreaking at times too. On my time working there, I had two experiences that I can only describe as supernatural. The first one, it was a particularly late night, and I was tasked with closing up the hangar and loading docks. Closing it up was basically making sure that there wasn't anything obstructing where the trucks would park, stacking up any loose crates, turning the lights off, and locking it all up. I was about done too, so I turn off the lights, and as I'm making my way to the door, a beer bottle comes rolling towards me from the dark between the tall stacks of the crates. It wasn't forceful or anything too, it sort of looked like someone gently placed it on the floor and rolled it towards me. I didn't think too much of it though, so I picked up the bottle and placed it inside a half-empty crate. I turned around, and as I started walking, another bottle comes rolling from the same place. Then another one, and tired and thinking that it was a co-worker trying to mess with me, I shout, "Hey, all right, you got me. Come on, I gotta close up." I expected to hear laughter or something, but instead, it was dead silent. I waited for a couple of minutes too, turned on my flashlight. I truly believed that somebody was there, and started looking around the stacks or the crates for what I thought it would be a giggling co-worker. But after searching each corner, eventually I just had to give up. I admit that I was a little bit weirded out at this point, but I just picked up the two bottles from the ground and placed it in the same crate as the first one. I turned off my flashlight and shouted at the darkness, "All right, I'm looking up. See you tomorrow." Just as I finished saying that, a crate full of bottles fell from one of the stacks and landed 2 feet from me, glass shards and beer exploding absolutely everywhere. And that, I have no idea how it happened. The next day I told my boss about it though, and he said that it was probably a rat. The thing is though, is that those crates, when full, probably weighed 20 pounds at least. How a rat could throw it like that is just impossible. Talking to my co-workers too, they told me that they've also experienced weird stuff during the closing hours down there. Anyway, but my second experience happened again when I was closing this place, and this time I was closing the pub. So when closing the pub, the last thing that you usually do is restock the walk-in freezer. The freezer is probably just as old as the building itself, to be honest, and it sits underground, right beneath the bar. I was down there filling that enormous thing with kegs and crates, and being a very old freezer from a time when safety wasn't a big concern, the thing doesn't open from the inside. No handle, nothing. Just a flat, plain steel door. So I did what I always did when I had to go inside that thing. I put a keg securing the door open. And I was about halfway through that task when I hear the door slamming shut. I rushed towards the door, but it was actually locked shut. I started pounding on it, but the only other person there was my boss in the office, 2 floors above me, probably with the door closed. I tried my phone, but since I'm locked underground inside of a steel and lead box, I had no service. I was wearing only jeans and a t-shirt, so things were getting chilly pretty quickly. My face was going numb and my hands were getting stiff, and I made a blanket out of cardboard, but it was doing very little keeping the cold at bay. The only reason I didn't freeze to death, though, was because I had a date with a regular and she went there looking for me. She asked my boss where I was, and when he couldn't find me, he went to the basement and found me inside the freezer. I was there for about 45 minutes when he found me, and I was starting to consider writing a letter to my parents and drinking myself to sleep. My boss, he installed a chain to keep the door open after that, but I refused to ever walk in that death trap ever again.
No kidding.
But the weirdest part was that the keg that I had holding the door open, it was now at the other side of the room when I got out. It was a full steel keg, mind you. Not something that can just slide away, let alone quietly. Anyway, in the end, I stopped working there shortly after for unrelated reasons, but it's something that has always stuck with me.
Orcam Read for people with low vision.
Sulfonyl fluorides are key in the fields of chemical biology.
Introducing Orcam Read, the ultimate solution for people with reading difficulties. With the simple press of a button, the device's smart reading feature enables you to use voice commands to read a specific section on a page.
Find molecule. The molecule's main function is increasing the rate chemical reactions within the cells.
The content you're reading will no longer be a constant struggle for you. Buy now at orcam.com.
Ever since I was 3 years old, I knew one girl, and her name was Emma. Because we were in the same group in kindergarten, later we attended the same school too. We were never really close until we turned 9 or 10, because we got into the same group of friends, and soon we became best friends. Not surprising for that age too. We hang out a lot, literally spent all the free time with each other that we could. I knew that Emma had problems at home too. Her mother was an alcoholic and an addict, and even though she denied it all the time, we just knew it. Most of the time we would spend our time together on the streets. However, rarely we would stay at my place when it was raining or during storms and blizzards. But we never entered her apartment when someone was at home, and even then we never really stayed for longer than 10 minutes. My mother suspected that she was stealing stuff. A pair of golden earrings went missing and we never found them again, and just asked me to be more careful around her. And eventually, I noticed what my mother meant. Emma would come up with some crazy excuses to stay in my apartment, like saying that if we got under the rain that she would catch a cold during her period and in the future she wouldn't be able to give birth due to that or something. I wasn't a dumb kid but decided to not point it out, but one summer afternoon I decided to bring up the topic of Emma's family again. She took me to her room and nobody was there. Everything went normal, so we started hanging there more often. But I noticed a lot that weren't there before, and when we left the door frame, I saw a woman and a man sitting in a kitchen smoking. I knew that Emma didn't have a father. He died when she was 2 or so, so I assumed that it was her mother's friend or something. The person said, "Is that, in my name? You've changed a lot. Such a pretty face." I was so weirded out as she and that man stared at me intently, eyeing up my body and face. I was 10, so I only understood that later, how creepy it was. I'm pretty sure that I've never actually met her mother before, so probably she saw me in kindergarten albums or something, but after that encounter, Emma started acting really strange, asking about my parents' full names, where exactly they work, whether I have extended family or not, persuading me to go to abandoned places. She literally dragged me to her place several more times where I met her mother and that man again. Weird comments too, especially about my body and face, happened every time. I told my mother about Emma's behavior. I didn't tell about the weird stuff with her mother, and she banned me from hanging out with Emma completely at that point. The important note, too, is that after me and Emma stopped talking, she transferred to another school by demand of her mother. Anyway, it was a regular morning, a month or two after I'd stopped talking with Emma. I was heading out to school when suddenly an old beaten-up car pulled up near me and a woman came out of it. I couldn't see her face clearly due to the scarf around her face, and I assumed that she was just a passenger getting out of the car. So I continued my way towards the school. However, I haven't even made more than a step when she firmly grabbed my arm. She started saying something about my mother being in hospital and that I needed to go with her, and her voice seemed sort of familiar, and the rest of the face too. She also said full names of my parents and that she's related to me from my uncle's side. She said his name too. I started to freak out and started denying her demand to get in the car, so she grabbed my shoulder, placed her palm on my mouth, and dragged me to the car. That's when I saw that the driver was that man from Emma's place. I bit the woman's hand as hard as I could, thrashed until she finally let go, and then I ran back home as quickly as I could. My mother came home furious after she was alerted that I never got to school, but she quickly calmed me down when she saw my state. My clothes were torn on the sleeve, my arm was heavily bruised, and I was sobbing. I was never an emotional kid, rarely showed even mild emotions, so this was completely unexpected from her. I explained everything that happened, and she showed me all the photos of relatives and asked if I recognized that woman, and I didn't. My mother never really said a word to me about it after that, and I think we just sort of pretended that it never happened. Today, I stumbled across Emma's Facebook, and there was a photo of her mother, and in that photo was that same scarf from that day. I denied the possibility that it was her throughout my whole childhood, but here it was, a proof that makes it impossible to lie to myself anymore. I need to let it out because my mother never got me any psychological help after this, and I just bottled it up. But I have to ask, why did Emma's mother do that? Did Emma know about it? I guess that I'll probably never know.
I don't think you'd want to know.
So I believe that for a number of years, my family home, built in the 1960s by my grandparents from my father's side, has been haunted by several different paranormal entities over the course of decades, just because of major differences between the happenings themselves. It's a two-story house with my parents and I sleeping on the second floor, and my sister and grandparents sleep on the first floor. For me, however, this began around 15 years ago. My older sister was the first one afflicted, I think. In a short span of time, she began having constant sleep paralysis experiences, which I know aren't scientifically related to anything paranormal, but the folklore of my country relates them to a specific entity known as a dark man, for a lack of a better translation to English, or what you might call a sleep paralysis demon, often thought of as a mischievous and perhaps even evil spirit behind this. At first, nothing was really done about it or thought about it, but these became so frequent that it started to weird out my parents a bit, as well as myself and my sister too. Again after this, of course, but the most shocking thing during the beginning of these happenings came when my mother, my sister, and I were all in our living room watching TV, when suddenly, from...
Alright, it is pretty close to the time that I was planning to get off. I think I'm dead for today. I can't keep my eyes open for anything, so I need to close down and try for another time. So, I'm going to say it's good night tonight. So, I make an anime. Thank you for watching. I hope this was interesting. I know I'm not much of a talker because I get really concentrated with the art That's why I did music and some scary stories. I hope this is actually very interesting to you, because I'm trying new things on it. And I hope to see you next time I do this. So, like I said, I'm going to try Friday or Saturday. If I can't do it on Friday or Saturday, I'm going to do a game night. And if I can do game night on Friday, then Saturday or Sunday,